this could be the start of something special. Plus, Trey Hendrickson still MIA from OTAs. How long can this standoff actually last? Our Bengals reporter Ben Baby joins the show to tell us everything we need to know about what the heck is going on in Cincinnati. And Bill Barnwell is dishing out the last of his off-season superlatives. Find out who received exactly what this offseason as we welcome you to NFL Live. I'm Hannah Storm here in the studio. We have Mr. Kevin Clark, the great Mina Kimes, and Bill Barnwell joining us as well. And we're going to start in my adopted hometown, H-Town, with the Houston Texans quarterback C.J. Stroud. He was under siege all of last season. It contributed to a fall off from his stellar rookie season because of that offensive line. He averaged over a yard less per attempt last year compared to his first year, through 7 more picks. I mentioned the O-line. He was sacked 14 more times in 2024 than he was in 2023. Here is his new offensive coordinator, Nick Caley.
Well, it depends on the players we got, and that's not a cop-out. That's the reality of it. So it can evolve, be willing to change and do whatever we need to do that's necessary based on who we have and who we're playing. Whether that's, again, you want to get big in terms of multiple personnel or not, gap schemes or zone schemes, committing to more play action or not, that's going to really be dependent on, what your personnel dictates and who you have available. So again, that's the great part about this year is we get to do a lot of different things and really put a lot of guys in different positions.
Okay, so that is Nick Caley. So can we introduce America to him a little bit? He has college experience, NFL experience, but not a lot of people know much about him.
Yeah, I'll start here. He's one of the most important people in the NFL this year because it's his job to get an elite quarterback back on track. He worked for Sean McVay and Bill Belichick. Those are 2 pretty good coaches to work under, if you haven't noticed. But when you're a passing game coordinator for Sean McVay, you're not calling the shots. So this is a huge leap up for him. For me with the Texans, do not attribute to the quarterback what you can attribute to the offensive line and to the play caller. Last year, it was bad. C.J. Stroud was pressured 50 more times in 2024 than 2023, and it showed. His deep ball went from 58% completion percentage his rookie year to 35% last year. So it's Nick Caley's job. What I like is in his first press conference, C.J. Stroud said that Nick is going to give him a lot of control at the line of scrimmage. Bobby Slowick did not give him that. I felt that Bobby Slowick's protection schemes were, frankly, it's at some points amateurish last year. You combine that with the personnel problems. Kenyon Green, who's now gone, was one of the worst offensive linemen in football last year. There's going to be a big step up here for the Texans. I think that C.J. Stroud's going to get back on track. He is as a big a bounce-back candidate as there is in this league.
As we keep obsessing over this O-line as being one of the main reasons why, there wasn't regression for C.J. Stroud.
No.
He just didn't make the leap that a lot of people expected, Mina. Do you think the Texans have done enough to rectify some of those issues?
Yes and no. Yes, because I agree with a lot of what Kevin said there about how the coaching change could potentially help. Watching this Texans offensive line last year, which was a disaster, quite frankly, both in terms of pass protection and run blocking, the thing that also struck me often was they just looked so unprepared for pressure. You saw defenses as the season went on start running more games against them, sending types of blitzes that they routinely struggled to pick up. And so for Nick Caley and for this new look staff, job number 1 is getting the offensive line better prepared for that. The quarterback as well, by the way, he's part of that protection too. So I do think the coaching change could be helpful. But then at a certain point, in January, throughout the season, but in January, the talent on the offensive line matters. And that's where I'm a little bit skeptical because I look at this group and I don't see that much improvement, frankly. And it would be surprising to me if on their own they played that much better than last year.
Yeah, one of the ways to avoid having your mediocre offensive line exposed is to keep them out of 3rd and long. And that's something the Texans could not do last year. They were in 3rd and long game after game after game. And that's because they couldn't run the ball on 1st down. On 1st and 10, they had the worst rushing success rate of any team in football, which is just measuring how often you're staying on schedule, not getting behind the chains. And so for the Texans, one of the things I think we might see Nick Caley do is something he mentioned in that press conference, which is gap scheme, something the Rams did a couple of years ago to really revitalize their run game. They had been a zone-heavy run team, and they switched to more gap schemes with Kyron Williams, got some bigger offensive linemen in there, and that really got that run game going. The Texans were a very zone-heavy run team last year, so I wonder if Nick Caley is brought in some heavier offensive linemen. Cam Robinson's in here, Trent Brown is here, Laken Tomlinson, those guys are all 320, 330 or above. Are they going to be more of a gap run team to kind of give defenses a little more to worry about on first down and then avoid those third and longs as a result?
Yeah, I mean, Stroud sacked 90 times over the course of the last 2 seasons behind only the guy that he was drafted behind, Bryce Young. All right, let's go down I-45 to the Cowboys in search of an upgrade at the wide receiver position. Behind C.D. Lamb, they trade for George Pickens in the offseason, sending draft compensation to the Steelers. New head coach Brian Schottenheimer on what he's been seeing from both wideouts in camp so far.
I think it's great for CD to have someone like George. Not that George is a young player, but someone that GP really looks up to in CD. They obviously have trained some together, but that relationship's really cool. And I'm enjoying kind of just sitting back and watching it develop, and the two of them getting together and spending time with Junior Adams. And it's been really cool and fun for me to watch just how it all is beginning to fit together.
And here's why the Cowboys desperately needed another wideout. C.D. Lamb had over 1,600 more receiving yards than the next closest Cowboy player in the last 2 seasons, and that was tight end Jake Ferguson. That is by far the largest difference between a team's top 2 players in receiving yards. I mean, Nina, what do you think this is going to look like for the Cowboys?
I'm really optimistic about this Cowboys offense. I love what these two receivers not only do for each other in terms of, taking advantage of the attention that is given to each of them individually, but also what they do for the offense as a whole. So last year, Hannah, CeeDee Lamb, when he was faced single high coverage, was 4th league wide in yards per game. George Pickens was 8th. If I know that, defensive coordinators know that, which means they're not going to leave their quarterbacks on an island against these two, which means the Cowboys offense will be running into more favorable looks on the ground. I think they're going to face a lot of too high. And if that offense, if the run game can be more efficient, whoever becomes the lead back, whether it's Jaden Blue or Javonte Williams, then this suddenly, to me, becomes one of the more efficient and explosive offenses in the NFL. So I really like how it all plays together.
Classic good news, bad news situation here for this trade. The good news is George Pickens is going to make the Cowboys a lot better. The bad news is you were the 3rd best team in the NFC East before this trade, and you're still the 3rd best team in the NFC East. But it raises their ceiling on offense. George Pickens, since he entered the league, is the 3rd best vertical receiver behind only Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill. That's elite company. And one of the most interesting stats about him that tells the story is that he's one of the best receivers in football when he's not open. He creates open space with his catch radius, with the way he plays. He told me a couple years ago he believes he's the best player in the world. That's not uncommon for a professional athlete, but what he does with it is the interesting part. He believes he should get the ball on every single snap. Again, not uncommon, but he plays with a violence because of that. He wants to take that aggression out. Hey, I'm not getting the ball on an unsuspecting cornerback or an unsuspecting linebacker. He wants to have extracurricular activities throughout the field because he just thinks he should be the center of attention at all times. That dovetails really well with an owner who wants to be the center of attention all the time. So I'm expecting some interesting press conferences at the very least in Dallas. I'm expecting this to work on the field. Off the field, bigger question might be for another day.
Believe Jerry Jones, but I also think he's the best GM in the world. So this works out very well for the Cowboys to mix him in with George Pickens. Not only is George Pickens going to make the Cowboys better, but I believe that the Cowboys and Dak Prescott are going to make George Pickens not only better, but also easier. To Kevin's point, George Pickens has the second lowest, expected catch rate of any wide receiver in football over the last 3 years, which means he's getting the ball in really tight situations where you would not expect receivers to catch the ball very often. He has exceeded that year after year and is one of the highest catch rates over expectations for the NFL's next gen stats of any receiver in football. And Dak Prescott is really good at placing the football on the kinds of routes George Pickens likes to run. Those back shoulders, those slants, those digs. Dak Prescott's ball placement on those particular routes is consistently excellent. He has not had a guy who's very good running those routes outside of CeeDee Lamb over the past few years. I really love the fit of Pickens with Dak in this offense.
It was interesting to hear his quarterback from last season, Russell Wilson, say this week, really singing his praises and saying, you mentioned his confidence, but he said he believes some of that negativity surrounding Pickens, that he is misunderstood. That was the word that Russell Wilson used. All right. We also have news from Adam Schefter. New on NFL Live, he says the Niners and the Eagles are working to finalize a trade that will send edge rusher Bryce Huff to San Francisco for a mid-round pick. This trade cannot and would not be processed until after June 1st, but both sides are working to make it happen. And Huff has already reworked his contract to facilitate the trade. So, Mina, he had been signed to a 3-year, $51 million deal to replace Hassan Reddick, but that was a disappointing season in 2024. What do you make of this trade?
I think it makes sense for both sides. From Philadelphia's standpoint, this is more of a salary dump. They're getting some cap relief from this. And I think he just wasn't a good scheme fit for them, for Vic Fangio's defense, which is why he really didn't see the field that much. And then for San Francisco, he's reunited with Robert Saleh, who got his best play out of him in New York. And again, for that 4-down defense, it makes a lot more sense. You can rush him from a wide 9 alignment, which is what Saleh likes to do. You can bump your first-round draft pick, Mykal Williams, inside to help stop the run. There's not going to be as much pressure on him, I think, to be more complete. And so, I think San Francisco gets a little pass rush juice, which they do desperately need.
Yeah, the Saleh connection, great point there for the Niners' favorite to win.